Hi, my name is Bibek Adhikari. I am your English instructor. In today's class, we are going to solve the reading portion of Unit 13, that is the Chimney Sweeper. So, let's begin. We are now going to study the poem called The Chimney Sweeper by William Blake. This poem is about talking about the past, that is, the narrating past events. So, let's start. When my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry. Weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, in soot I sleep. There's little Tom Dacre, who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was saved. So I said, Hush, Tom, never mind it. For when your head's bare, you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun. Then naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise upon clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark and got with our bags, our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. William Blake. So let's start by learning the meanings and the themes and different kind of imageries that are associated with the poem called Chimney Sweeper. Let's first start by learning its background. So this poem is set in the late 18th and 19th century in England. So this is set against the dark background of child labor in 18th and 19th century England. So this poem was initially published in two parts. First, it was published in the book called Songs of Innocence. Later, it was published in the book called Songs of Experience. So it was published in two distinct parts. At the age of 4 or 5, the children were sold to clean chimneys. So this is the poem. The poem is called Chimney Sweeper, a person who sweeps the chimneys. It is set against the dark background of child labor in 18th and 19th century in England. And this poem was published by William Blake in two parts. First, it was published in Songs of Innocence in 1789 AD, and later it was published in Songs of Experience in 1794 AD. The people at that time used to, sell the children at the age of 4 and 5 to clean the chimneys. It was because children were small. Yes, indeed, children are small, and it also shows they had a very diminutive existence that was socially accepted at that time, right? So small little kids, those little kids were sold, and they used to clean chimneys. They used to go inside the chimneys and clean the chimneys. They were full of soot. That was the background. And in such a background, this poem was written. Now let's explain about the main idea of the poem. Now what's the main idea? We're going to study about that. The main idea could be recounting a dream. And how could that be a main idea? These are some of the main ideas. Now let's look at the different kind of main ideas. The first main idea is recounting a dream. What is the poet trying to do? He is trying to recount a dream because one of his fellow, chimney sweeper had a dream in which an angel rescued the boy from coffins and later took them to a sunny meadow. So that was the dream. An angel came down from heaven, rescued the boys, and took them to a sunny meadow. But in the later poem, an apparently adult speaker encounters a child chimney sweeper, abandoned in the snow while his parents are at church or possibly even suffer death, where church is referring to being with God. Right? So in the later part of the poem, the pathetic condition of the child chimney sweeper is depicted. What that means is the real condition of the child chimney sweeper is sown. And the last idea could be this poem is about a chimney sweeper and his fellow Tom Dacre. The poet begins by mentioning that when my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could weep, right? That's why he started sweeping the chimneys in suit, and he started sleeping in suit. Then immediately in the second stanza, he starts referring about this fellow chimney sweeper called Tom, and he explains about a strange dream that Tom had. In his dreams, Tom saw that angels came from heaven and opened the chimneys, and coffin and locked them all in the coffins of black, right? No, not like that. What happened was initially Tom found himself in a coffin, but suddenly angel came and rescued, something like that. So this is about recounting a dream, right? And finally, the poet explains about this open meadow with clouds and all these nice things. But when Tom finally awoke, he was still in dark. He could not see the sun. He could not see the meadow and all that thing. And the morning was cold and Tom was happy and warm finally. So if all do their duty, they do not need no fear and harm. Let's talk about some of the other ideas of the poem. So we have things like, angel coming down from heaven, something like that. We have a dream sequence in the poem. So these things give the poem a significant height. Now, angel is not an ordinary angel, rather it is a metaphor. Why does the poet use this metaphor of an angel? Now, that is the question. Why did he use? Why not maybe a magician? Why not maybe someone else? Why an angel? Because angels are divine. Angels are heavenly bodies. Angels come down to earth from heaven and they rescue the needy people, right? So angel is more like a messiah, is more like a helper, and who is coming down from the heaven and trying to help the chimney sweepers. And another thing is dream sequence. Why is this dream sequence used? Because the poet is trying to show the dreams of all the chimney sweepers that are left in oblivion, right? Every child has got right to dream. Everyone has the capacity, has the equal right to dream. But these rights was violated back in the late 18th and 19th century in England, because the children were sold in the chimneys, to sweep the chimneys. And by showing the dream sequence of a person, a young child chimney sweeper called Tom Dacre, the poet is trying to show that even children, of those wretched background have got their own dreams, and someday an angel might just appear out of nowhere, out of the blue, and help these poor fellas. So that is one of the ideas. The use of dream sequence is to show hope. And hope is a great thing. We cannot live without hope. So chimney sweeper even had a little amount of hope left, and they were surviving because of that hope. Another strong aspect of this poem is narration. The narration is quite strong. The poem is strongly divided into 6 stanzas, correct? The stanzas do rhyme. The rhyme pattern is AABB, something like that. The rhyme pattern is AABB. And the poem is written in narrative style. We have a narrator, the main protagonist, who is unnamed, not unreliable, but unnamed narrator. And this narrator is trying to narrate something, is trying to explain something, is trying to explain about Tom and how he used to live. And now Tom had a weird dream, and in that dream he was set free by angels. He ran wild in the, sunny meadow, and he was having all the fun, but suddenly his dream collapsed. So back to reality, something like he was taken back to reality. And the reality is a very dirty place. The reality is the narrator and his friends are all covered in soot. Their families are either dead or very, very poor, so they cannot afford them to raise them. That's why the poet is, thrown back to reality, is hurled back to reality. And what the poet is trying to say is, even though reality is all stingy, even though reality is all black and dark, dreams could be golden. Dreams could be full of light. So that is the main idea. There's a huge difference between reality and dream in the poem. So we have something called reality versus dream. Reality is very dark, but dream is very golden. So you see, Happiness could be found even in the darkest of times. All you have to do is be positive, be hopeful, be hopeful. So that is the main idea. That is the other idea of the poem. So reality versus Tom. Finally, in the last stanza, what the poet says is Tom awoke and rose in the dark, and there was no happiness, there was no light, there was nothing, right? But still Tom was happy and warm. Why was Tom still happy and warm despite all these bad circumstances? Because he had hope, right? So other themes could be darkness and light. So darkness and light are other two themes of the poem. Reality versus dream, darkness versus light. Darkness represents all the bad things, light represents all the good things. Reality is very awful, dream is all golden and all, ululating and all till, inviting, right? So that was just the basic explanation. I know there's always room for explanation. You can explain endlessly. You can go on explaining about this poem for days and days and days. Still, you may not reach the conclusion, right? And you can go and explain about rhetorics also, but that is not what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to the exercise portion. So let's go to the first portion called vocab. In the vocab section, let's find out some of the meanings of difficult words. Actually, there are not many difficult words, but let's see if there are some really difficult words. The first one is a pipe or structure through which smoke or steam is carried. That one is easy. That's chimney, right? Let's not do that. Let's do black powder in the smoke of wood, coal. This is the first one. Actually, the second one. Naked, uncovered, box in which dead body is buried or cremated. So let's do these first three ones. Black powder in the smoke of wood, coal. So what is the answer? The answer is suit. Naked, uncovered. What is the answer? Bare. Box in which dead body is buried or cremated. What is the answer? Coffin. We have another divine or supernatural messenger from deity. That is angel. Very easy. Let us now go to the question answer section. The first one is who composed the poem. That is a very easy question. Let's leave that. The second question is why did the speaker cry? So why did the speaker cry? This is a why question, demands a reason. The speaker cried because his mother was dead and his father sold him while he was quite young, because he was sold as a chimney sweeper. This is another question. What does the expression that curled like a lamb's back mean? This is to say that the poet is trying to explain that the hair looked like a lamb's back. That's it. With that, we have come to the end of today's class. Now I'm going to give you some homework like always. Now your homework is, have you seen a child like Tom Dacre in your locality? I think you must have. If yes, when and where? It could be a restaurant, it could be in a motor garage, it could be in any place. What does he or he do for his her living? So that is your question. Have you ever seen a boy like Tom in your locality? If yes, when and where? And what does he or she do a living? So after that, write some paragraphs on that boy or a girl. Finally, write a couple of paragraphs on him or her. With that, we have come to the end of today's class. If you have any questions or suggestions regarding this video series, feel free to write us at learning@deerwalk.edu.np. Thank you.